Good afternoon and welcome to the April 10th edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver-Caney and I thank you so much for joining me today. Before we get started, I do want to tell you a bit about the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, and then we'll get into the questions that have come from our community today. So, the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness was founded in July of 2021 with an ambitious vision for all of Maryland's college and career school students, and that's that they would be able to achieve these 6 pillars of collegiate financial wellness. Those are being creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. I'm not going to read all the small print for you, so if you're interested in learning more about the center, you can visit us online at mccfw.org and also follow us on social media. We are at the MCCFW on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, and we have a YouTube channel that's also out there as at the MCCFW. All right. And before I get into the questions, I just want to issue a quick disclaimer that Office Hours is presented for informational purposes only. The information that we present here does not constitute personal, legal, or financial advice. There are a lot of changes going on, and we do our very best to give you the most up-to-date, accurate information, but ultimately, you need to take the information that you have compiled from sources like us that are reliable and combine that with your individual situation, which includes an accounting of your loan portfolio, your household income, your career. All of those things are factors that should be considered when you're making strategic decisions about your student loan repayment journey. All right. Now that I've got that out of the way, I have the top question that's coming from our community, and that question is, what is going on with the FAFSA? This is a great question. It's a loaded question, and there's actually a congressional hearing that is underway right now discussing what is happening with the FAFSA. I'm going to give you the short version of it, and that is that the FAFSA is going through a process that is intended to simplify it, and that is through legislation that was passed in 2019 called the FAFSA Simplification Act. The goal of this act is to simplify the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. It's also to expand eligibility and access for families that need it the most. And although the bill was passed in 2019, implementation of this FAFSA Simplification Act was set for the 2024-2025 award year. Now, with award years in higher education, where financial aid is concerned, the years run July 1st to June 30th. So all the changes that we're going through right now are in preparation so that once July 1 hits, there'll be a new experience going forward and new levels of eligibility for students. Right now, what's happening is the implementation has just experienced some hiccups, let's say, and that's really the subject of the congressional hearing that's going on right now, which leads me to the next question where I'll get into more detail about exactly what's happening, and that is, where is my financial aid? This question was actually coming from a student who is wondering where their financial aid offer letter is. Sometimes you might have heard that referred to as an award letter, but the financial aid offer is basically a summary of the financial aid that a school is offering to a student. And when I say financial aid, that could mean aid that's coming from the federal government, aid that's coming from the state government, institutional aid, which could be scholarships or grants that are coming from funding that the school has. So the term financial aid is a very broad one. It includes basically all sources of funds that you would use outside of your own that would be processed through the school to contribute toward paying for your higher education experience. So what you see, well, usually by now in the enrollment and financial aid cycle, students and families would have a financial aid offer in hand. They would be able to look at how much the school costs, and they would see the sources of financial aid that they have been offered in that letter that comes from the school. But it's important to remember that the letter that's generated by the school is based on information that has come to the school by way of the federal government from the FAFSA after the student completes it. So your financial aid offers are becoming available later in this cycle because schools usually have received FAFSA data by now, well in advance. We are at April 10th right now, and this is past the time when people have made decisions, and you can't make a truly informed decision without knowing how much it's going to cost you. And frankly, the cost of higher education is too expensive for most people to afford it by paying, cash outright. So that financial aid offer and what it includes is very critical to the decision-making process for students and families. So this year, things are a bit different. And that's because of the fact that students and families had a delayed start to being able to complete the FAFSA. Once they complete the FAFSA, that information goes to the Department of Education. The Department of Education kind of does their thing, and then that information goes to the schools. Once the schools have the FAFSA information from a student, they use the information that's in there to generate the financial aid offer letter. So you can't have the offer letter if you do not have information from the FAFSA. And unfortunately, during this process of implementing the Simplification Act, we've had some things like errors in processing. At one point, there was an error in a formula, which caused some faulty calculations. And when you have errors in the calculations, that means that people might be receiving word that they're eligible for aid that they're truly not eligible for, or vice versa. So it's really important for the financial aid offices to make sure that the information that they've received from a student's FAFSA by way of the federal government is accurate. And once they know that it's accurate for sure, then they can go about creating those financial aid offer letters. So your financial aid offer letter, if you have not received one yet, it is in the works, but I would highly recommend that you just give the financial aid administrators at whatever institutions you're dealing with a lot of grace, because they are not purposefully delaying this process. They are waiting for information. They have to vet that information. And once they've done that, they can provide you with more information to make an informed decision. The process was not expected to take this long, but here we are. So please, when you're reaching out to your campus-based financial aid offices or even admissions, be patient with them, because they are dealing with something that is beyond their control. And they want to make sure that before they provide you something in print, like that financial aid offer letter, that the information that's included therein is valid. And it gives you an accurate picture of the aid that you are eligible for. So hang in there. You're not alone in experiencing this, and not to minimize, the impact of what's happening. Just know that if it is happening to you, you are not alone. This is something that's happening nationwide, because the changes that have been made are made at the federal level, and the information from the federal government comes down to schools, and that's how schools are able to generate financial aid offer letters. So let's move on to the next question, and that is, what is the COA? COA stands for cost of attendance. And the question is this my bill? Well, the cost of attendance is not exactly your bill. The cost of attendance is an estimate, and it's an estimate based on your school's figures on how much they believe it will cost you to attend that institution for one academic year. Within the cost of attendance, there are a few big ticket items that are going to be used to arrive at that number. The first number, and this applies to public schools, this is residency. If you are an in-state resident, then you would have lower tuition, or if you're going to a community college and you're in district or in county, then you would have a lower tuition rate. If you're out of state or out of county, out of district, you would have a higher rate. So your residency status will be included in the cost of attendance. Next is housing. If you're attending school and there is an option to stay on campus, then your cost of attendance is probably going to include the payment for staying in a dormitory. If you're living off campus, there's an assumption out there for how much rent would cost. If you are staying at home with family, there's also a different cost associated with that. So based on the information that you submit on the FAFSA, they will determine your residency and your housing. And then use those answers to come up with components of your cost of attendance. Also, if there's a meal plan available at your institution, that cost will be reflected as well. And finally, your enrollment. Depending on the number of credits that you're enrolled in, whether you're classified as a part-time student or a full-time student, that would have an impact on how much your cost of attendance is. So keep in mind that the cost of attendance is not your bill. The cost of attendance is just an estimate that your school puts out there so that when you're thinking about attending a certain school, you can get a gauge for how much the bill might be. But the cost of attendance is a great starting place for comparing institutions. And once you actually receive your financial aid offer, you can compare that offer to the cost of attendance. The more accurate thing to do would be wait until you get a bill, make sure that the bill has you classified correctly, whether that's in-state or out-of-state, living on campus, off campus, or with parents, having a meal plan or not, enrolling in the school's health insurance plan, or enrolling full-time or part-time. When you get your bill, you want to dissect it, right? You want to make sure that they have you classified correctly in all of these categories so that you know exactly how much you have to pay. And once you have that financial aid award and you have your bill, you'll be able to see how much of your bill is covered by that financial aid award if you accept everything that's included in that award. The key is more success with less debt. So once you're able to get that accurate financial aid award letter, you want to compare the aid that has been offered to you against the bill. And that will let you know if there's a gap to cover. And if so, you'll have to make plans for how you're going to cover that gap. The other thing that I want to remind people of is that when we hear the term financial aid, sometimes people just think that that means free money, but that's not true. The word financial aid includes, the free or gift aid such as scholarships or grants, but it also includes loans. Federal student loans are a form of financial aid. So when you do receive that financial aid award letter, I want you to go through it line by line and figure out which portion or how much of that aid is actually gift aid, such as scholarships or grants, and how much of that aid comes from loans, because the award letter is going to include both gift aid and loans. But the big difference between a scholarship or a grant and a loan is that with a loan, you will have to pay it back. So if you are entering school fall of 2024 and waiting on that financial aid award letter, again, please be patient with your campus-based professionals, your financial aid counselors and administrators, because they're doing the best that they can with the information that they have available at this time. Once they get your accurate information from your FAFSA, which initially went to the federal government, then they'll be able to use that information to generate a truly accurate financial aid award letter for you. You can take that letter and then compare it against the bill and find out how much you'll be left to cover out of pocket. All right, let's move on to our next question. That question is, shifting gears a bit into student loan repayment. I recently reapplied for my IDR and it says that my new payment is $0 under SAVE. Is this real or too good to be true? And should I make the minimum payment of 1 cent? Now, I've got to be honest, I've never seen a minimum payment due of 1 cent for a student loan. But if this person sees it, hey, I believe it. I just want to break down a couple of elements of this question before I answer. The first one is IDR. IDR stands for income-driven repayment, and IDR plans are a variety of repayment plans that allow you to repay your student loans based on your household earnings, tax filing status, state of residency, and the number of people in your household, instead of just paying flat payments that are based on your balance alone. This particular borrower has applied for the SAVE plan. SAVE is one of several income-driven repayment plans, and it stands for Saving on a Valuable Education. You've probably heard about SAVE because it was in the news quite a bit late last year, and it is to date usually the most affordable income-driven repayment plan that is available. And for many people, switching over to SAVE has meant that their required payment is actually $0, and that is a real thing. So let's go to the answer. It is quite possible to have a required payment of $0.00, and I want to show you how the math works. When you're enrolled in SAVE or any other income-driven repayment plan, the federal government is going to take a look at your adjusted gross income for your household. they're going to compare your adjusted gross income to the poverty line for a family of the same size as your family in your state of residence, but they're going to compare it to 225% of that poverty line. And whatever the gap is, that's considered your discretionary or disposable income. In other words, that's income that you, in theory, have available to pay toward other things like your student loans. So they take that disposable income and then they multiply it by 10% because they're assuming that you can take 10% of that disposable income and you can afford to put that towards your student loan payment each month. So once that formula has been run, sometimes the result is zero. If people don't have any disposable income, then the required payment would be zero because 10% of nothing is nothing. So for this person that has received notice of this $0 payment, I assure you it is real. And if you are pursuing public service loan forgiveness or forgiveness under just income-driven repayment, then these payments of $0.00 will count as progress towards your cancellation under IDR and PSLF. So there is no need to make a payment. If you feel so inclined to make a payment, you are free to do so because there is never a prepayment penalty on federal student loans, but there is no incentive to make a payment because your $0 payments will count toward public service loan forgiveness. They'll also keep you in good standing, so you won't go into default if you do not make any payments. All right, and I'm going to pause for just a moment to take a look at a couple of comments that came in. The first one is, how do I see if I'm eligible for any assistance under President Biden's program? That is a great question, and thank you, Jay, for submitting that question. Earlier this week, I saw some news articles about President Biden's new plan for student loan debt cancellation. And I went to the White House to take a look at the fact sheet. And I actually took a screenshot of the title of it. It's fact sheet. President Biden announces new plans that would provide relief to borrowers disproportionately burdened by student loan debt. And I'm so glad, Jay, that you asked this question, because as of right now, there is nothing for you to do. The key words that I want people to zone in on that headline are that would, okay? That would. That lets us know that there is nothing concrete about this right now. So there is nothing that you need to do to get on track because this is still a work in progress. I'm glad to see that we have, Plan B. It is coming about, but nothing is concrete. So there's no need for you to take action yet. As with the other relief plans, I would assume, I know for sure you need to have federal student loans because no relief that's offered by the federal government covers private student loans. So you want to make sure that you have federal student loans. Beyond that, I'm scrolling through this announcement just to see if there's anything I missed. Beyond that, there's nothing at this very moment that you need to do because this plan has not been solidified. There's no application or anything out there. Some of the tenets of the plan say that there doesn't even need to be an application. Some of this is going to happen automatically. So the best advice that I can give as it relates to this new Biden-Harris student debt relief plan that was announced earlier this week is that it is a plan. There is no application. There's nothing for you to do just yet. It's just something that we know is coming. And as it is solidified, you can definitely know that I'm going to tell you about it as soon as I get some clear information. But thank you so much for that question. I have another comment here. Says, my son has a delinquent loan with Ed Financial Services, an official servicer of federal student aid. Okay, so let's talk about delinquency. If a student loan is in delinquency, that means that you are late on a payment or have missed a payment, but it's not as severe as being in default. If you're in default, that means that you actually have missed payments for 9 months or at least 270 days. And once you cross the line from being delinquent and going into default, that means that you open up the door for the Department of Education to shift your account over to a collections agency. That could expose you to also them suing you to collect the entire debt immediately. The lawsuit could lead to a judgment in which they could garnish your wages, your tax refund, or even Social Security benefits. So if it's delinquent, we don't want it to remain delinquent, but it's better to be delinquent than to be in default because default opens up just another avenue of really severe consequences that can also damage your credit. So for anyone who's dealing with student loan delinquency right now, I would definitely reach out to your servicer and ask them about options for temporary pauses in payments. The two options that are out there are deferments and forbearances. There are different types of deferments and forbearances, but what they have in common is that it's a temporary pause in your payments. And if you ask them about a deferment or forbearance, they'll probably ask you a few more questions to determine which type of deferment or forbearance you qualify for. But the key here is to definitely stay in touch with your servicer, because if you keep on missing payments and eventually go into default, it's harder to emerge from that than it is from delinquency. It's better to be in a deferment or forbearance so that that pause is official and you're not required to make any payments versus just not paying and not saying anything and going into default. So I would definitely contact Ed Financial so that you can find out the options for deferment and forbearances, enroll in one of them. They're meant to be temporary, and that time can be used to get on better footing and then figure out a plan to meet the obligation. The other thing that the borrower should probably consider is an income-driven repayment plan. It's possible that the fixed plans are too expensive, but for some people, their earnings are low enough based on the government formula that their required payment could be zero. So if you explore the income-driven repayment plan and your payment is zero, you don't have to make any payments, which is the same thing that's happening when you're delinquent. You're not making any payments. The only difference is delinquency can lead to default, which can damage your credit and expose you to lawsuits and all types of collections activities. Whereas officially enrolling in an income-driven plan, if your required payment is zero, you're still not paying anything, but you're remaining in good standing, you're on track, and that credit can be used for forgiveness programs like public service loan forgiveness and forgiveness by way of income-driven repayment. So thank you so much for those comments and for those questions. All right, so let's get to the next question. This is a question about deferments. It says, am I able to retroactively apply for a cancer deferment, considering I was diagnosed in 2009, but defaulted in 2016? I have since been out of default for the past 8 years. So for this borrower, first I want to say sending good vibes and prayers for continued health your way. And I'm sorry that your student loans have been a source of stress for you during something that is indeed stressful enough on its own. Before I answer the question, I do want to give you all some more details about the situation so that we have a full picture of the background before getting to the answer. So from this particular borrower, we learned that in 2004, they had consolidated and they had already been in default for a couple of years prior to consolidation. Consolidation is a way that you can emerge from default as well. But after consolidation, they went back into default again. 5 years later, they were diagnosed with breast cancer. In 2016, they emerged from default. At the end of last year, they consolidated their loans again and completed an employment certification for public service loan forgiveness. And as of this month, they're still waiting for their past payments to appear in the payment tracker. And their servicer is currently Mohela because they've applied for public service loan forgiveness, and they have worked for a qualifying employer the entire time. So this is a great question for a few reasons. I want to touch on public service loan forgiveness first. When you're earning credit for public service loan forgiveness, the magic number is 120. We need to have 120 months where you had loans that were in repayment while you were working for a qualifying employer. Time that does not count toward public service loan forgiveness includes time when loans were in default. This is why it's really important to, if you're delinquent, make sure that you avoid default, because default cuts you off from benefits like public service loan forgiveness and also can be extremely damaging to your credit. So time in default, again, does not count toward public service loan forgiveness, but thankfully this borrower is back on track. They've been out of default since 2016. So at this point, they've got about 8 years of credit toward public service loan forgiveness that will be reflected once Mohela has reviewed their account. In terms of the cancer deferment, I'm not aware of any way that you can retroactively get that. The cancer deferment was something that came up. It was relatively, well, it's still relatively new. It hasn't been around for 10 years at this point. So what we did find was that the deferment could not be applied to a treatment period that was prior to September 28th of 2018, and that has to do with when this deferment went into effect. So unfortunately, there's no way to go back and defer in this situation, but on the positive side, this borrower has 8 years out of the 10 that are necessary to achieve public service loan forgiveness. So I would advise staying the course. If public service loan forgiveness is the mission, you got about 2 years left, stay the course and consider enrolling in an income-driven repayment plan, especially the SAVE plan, if possible. SAVE is the most affordable. For most people, it's the most affordable income-driven repayment that we have ever seen. And it uses that formula that takes 10% of your discretionary income and dedicates it toward your student loan payment each month. But in July of this year, the formula for SAVE is set to change, and it's going to change specifically where undergraduate loans are concerned. So for borrowers who took out nothing but undergraduate loans, that percentage of your discretionary income is going to drop from 10% to 5%. So if all of your loans are undergraduate loans and you're enrolled in the SAVE plan, you should see your payment amount cut in half. And this is one of the more significant features of the SAVE plan. So for this borrower, take a look at SAVE if you're not enrolled already. If you're on track for public service loan forgiveness, you need to be enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan anyway. Hopefully, Mohela will update your payment count soon so we can officially see the 8 years of credit that we know you have already earned. But until that point, just stay the course. Make sure that you're enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, ideally the one that has the cheapest possible payment, and continue that work for a qualifying employer until you reach that 120-month milestone. And I'm going to pause for a moment because I see we got another comment. Yes, delinquent versus default, this can be serious. We'll look into the income-driven repayment plan if possible. Great, thank you so much, Jay. You definitely want to make sure that you look into the pauses as well as the income-driven repayment plans. The income-driven repayment plans are preferable to the pause because at least with an income-driven repayment plan, if your payment is indeed zero, you can keep on earning credit, towards your repayment. And with the SAVE plan, even if your payment is zero and interest is accruing, SAVE has an interest subsidy included. So the government will pay that accruing interest if your payment isn't large enough to cover it by itself. All right, let's move on to the next question. That is, should I consolidate my loans or not? Or will I lose all of my PSLF credit by consolidating? This is a great question and is so applicable at the moment because we are in this period called the IDR adjustment. And during the IDR adjustment, you can receive credit toward forgiveness for periods that would not have counted before. And this is helpful for people who are pursuing PSLF, but this is also helpful for people who don't work in public service, but are just looking for forgiveness by way of income-driven repayment. The April 30th deadline is extremely important because that's when the greatest benefits are set to expire. So let's get some details from this borrower. So this borrower has 16 loans that are all currently serviced by Mohela, and they've already applied for public service loan forgiveness before. They have 8 loans with 61 qualifying payments, 4 loans with 46 qualifying payments, and another 4 loans with 15 qualifying payments. Now, they've already explored consolidation, and from what they found in the application, enrolling in an income-driven repayment plan means that they will pay $117 a month. Now, normally with consolidation, outside of this special period that we're in, if you consolidate loans that have differing amounts of repayment history, all of that repayment history in terms of the time and earning credit gets wiped out. Your new consolidation loan starts at 0. Your first payment will be number 1 out of the 120 that you need to get to public service loan forgiveness. So prior to this IDR adjustment, consolidating, it reset your clock. And for that reason, a lot of people were like, no, I don't want to do that. I'd rather just stay where I am and let it be. If you keep these loans separately, then they will be forgiven at different points in time. The 8 loans that have 61 qualifying payments will be forgiven in about 5 years, whereas the loans that have 15 qualifying payments would not be forgiven for almost another 9 years. But if you apply to consolidate these loans through the federal government at studentaid.gov only by April 30th of this year, once these loans have been consolidated together, the entire consolidation loan will receive credit for the 61 qualifying payments that you have on those 8 loans with the most history. This feature is something that is going to go away after April 30th. So if you have loans that have differing amounts of repayment history or different qualifying payments, to get the biggest benefit out of this IDR adjustment period, the advice would be to consolidate those loans through studentaid.gov and make sure that you complete the application by April 30th, because after April 30th, this benefit will go away. So for this borrower, if they consolidate all the loans together, that means that those loans that have 15 qualifying payments will be bumped up to 61. The loans that have 46 qualifying payments will also be bumped up to 61. So everything gets closer to forgiveness if you consolidate or apply to consolidate by April 30th of this year. So again, recap of the advice. First, complete the consolidation application online at studentaid.gov by April 30th of this year. Your consolidation loan doesn't have to be dispersed by April 30th. You just need to complete the application by April 30th. Today is April 10th. You have 20 days. It's more than enough time to consolidate those loans. The application should not take you more than 20 minutes, maybe 30 if you read the whole master promissory note line by line and try to digest it. But my point is, it's free. It's available to you online only at studentaid.gov. And to get the greatest benefit, you want to make sure that you complete that application by April 30th. Next is that consolidating all the loans will align their timeline, and that new consolidation loan will receive credit for the repayment history that's attached to basically the oldest loan in your portfolio, the loan that has the most repayment history. So everything gets sped up to 61 months for this particular borrower. I must warn you though, after you consolidate, your qualifying payment count is going to temporarily reset to 0. So I would strongly advise anyone who is already applied for PSLF, even if you're not consolidating, take screenshots, download records, because the PSLF process is going to be changed again starting in May. And you want to make sure that you have your records available. They're actually going to pause processing starting in May. So you can submit an application, but it's not going to be processed until after this pause is done. And there are going to be some other servicers that are involved, not just Mohela. So you want to make sure that you have your records. Download your repayment history. Also, take screenshots. I'm not saying this to say that they're going to lose everything. I'm just saying that they're going through a big change. And just in case this change hits some rough patches, you want to make sure that you have documentation of your repayment history and your payment counts. But back to the third point, your PSLF count is temporarily going to reset to 0. After you consolidate your loans, your older loans are going to be paid off. A new loan is going to be originated. Because it's a new loan, it starts off at 0 in terms of the number of payments made. So when you see your first qualifying payment count immediately after consolidation, it's going to say you have 0 qualifying payments. And that's perfectly normal because that first payment count is based on the history of that new consolidation loan. Usually within 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes faster, you will see that your account has been credited again with the prior months of credit that you had before consolidation, because they go back and conduct a follow-up count that examines the pre-consolidation history of your loans. So my advice to this borrower is that you should consolidate the loans, because you have some loans with 61 out of 120 payments, some with 46, some with 15. And if you don't consolidate them, they're going to be on different timelines for forgiveness. If you do consolidate them, being certain to complete that consolidation application by April 30th of this year, online only at studentaid.gov, then you can get those old loans paid off, get one new loan originated, and that entire loan will be credited for at least the 61 months that you have already earned. Keep in mind the first payment count is going to set you back to zero, but in a few weeks, you'll see the count indeed updated to reflect the PSLF credit that you've earned. But the key is you've got to get that application in by April 30th of this year, because that benefit is set to expire after April 30th. All right, let's move on to our next question. I think this is actually our last question. It says, I saw a YouTube short where Dave Ramsey was basically saying that you have less than a 5% chance of being approved for PSLF, even if you make it to the end. I just started my journey last fall, so is there any evidence to back up what he's saying? I'm going to show you all some evidence on PSLF. So a little bit of background on PSLF. It went into effect in October of 2007. Since the PSLF program requires a minimum of 10 years of repayment history and employment history, the first batch of truly eligible borrowers could not have submitted a successful application until really like the winter of 2017. And there were a lot of people who submitted applications who just weren't there yet. They weren't at that 120-month milestone. So there were a lot of rejections because people were applying when they weren't truly eligible. But either way, once the applications, the window for truly eligible borrowers opened up between that point in late 2017 and the fall of 2021, we've got estimates of between 7,500 and 16,000 borrowers being approved for PSLF. Wide range on that. The number that I've seen for a while is 16,000, but it had been revised downward. Either way, that's not a lot of people. In fact, it equates to about a 1 to 2% acceptance rate. So if you were in that batch of people that applied between late 2017 and 2021 and you were rejected, you are not alone. 98 to 99% of people that applied for PSLF during that time were rejected. But in October of 2021, the Biden administration came out with some temporary changes to the rules of PSLF, and those changes relaxed the rules quite a bit. So between October of 2021 and really November of 2021 and March 30th of 2024, the number of approvals has jumped to more than 871,000. So we went from 16,000 to 871,000. That is more than a 50-fold increase. And those numbers are pretty glaring. And I'm proud to say that the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness has played a significant part in that, especially for Marylanders. Since 2022, we have helped Marylanders, well, not just Marylanders, but since 2022, we've helped public servants eliminate more than $15 million in debt. And that debt relief is truly because of the temporarily relaxed rules that were implemented by the Biden administration in October of 2021. So if you look at the numbers, it's very clear that public service loan forgiveness, success at public service loan forgiveness has improved more than 50-fold. So I would not necessarily listen to Dave Ramsey on this. I would do some fact finding for myself. You can look at the facts. You can go straight to the Department of Education. Usually when there's a round of debt cancellation, the White House will come out with a fact sheet or an announcement to update that figure on how much money has been, how many debts have been forgiven, and for how many successful applicants. You can get those facts on your own, and you will see that public service loan forgiveness is improving. And after you review those facts, you can make an informed strategic decision for yourself. Generally, I think that people make a lot of broad statements about student loans a little too comfortably, and you really have to look for the facts on your own and go straight to the source, which is the Department of Education. Also count the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness as a reliable source for facts. And after you have your information from people who specialize in this, then make your decisions. Initially, PSLF very poor acceptance rate, and that is a fact for sure. But things have changed, and things have changed quite a bit. And I would hate for someone to miss out on benefiting from those changes because they listened, to someone who is really just accentuating the negative. So kudos to you for getting on track for PSLF anyway. I hope that you will stay on track unless your situation changes and you decide that you want to take a different route with the debt. But PSLF can work. We have seen it work. We have helped people make it work for themselves. And if you're committed to public service, I would stick to it, maximize those benefits. And again, review the facts. They speak for themselves. All right, that was our last question. Before we close out, I want to just make sure for our Marylanders in particular that you are aware that the state of Maryland has a student loan ombudsman. The student loan ombudsman is there to assist you with any problems that you might be having with your servicers, and they can help you with a lot. Those servicer issues include failure by the servicer to communicate with a borrower, errors in crediting principal and interest payments, misapplied payments, inaccurate interest rate calculations, billing errors, loan consolidations and or modifications errors, and or inappropriate collection activity or tactics. You can visit the Student Loan Ombudsman online at the Maryland Department of Labor. They have added more information to their website about their servicers, as well as how Marylanders can get on track for public service loan forgiveness, and information for employers who are processing public service loan forgiveness applications. So please do check out the Office of Maryland Student Loan Ombudsman. And I don't see any more questions at this time. So I want to go ahead and say thank you so much for joining me for this, the April 10th edition of Office Hours. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver-Kennedy. I'm the founder and director of the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. You can keep up with us online at mccfw.org or follow us across socials. We are at the MCCFW on X, Facebook, Instagram, and we also have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel where we place these office hours videos after they've been annotated, so you can go straight to the content that concerns you. I do see we have a comment that popped up. Okay. Oh, I gotta thank you. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you joining and sticking with me because I know this is a lot. Also, I've got a question there about how can I make an appointment with you? Okay. So for the center, we actually offer some free appointments. They're limited though because it's grant funded. We have pro bono hours, so I'm happy to send you the link to schedule a pro bono student loan strategy session with myself or one of our coaches. My vision for this is that all student loan borrowers in the state of Maryland will be able to get trusted advice for free. We're not quite at that place yet, but that's the vision and the direction that we're headed in. In the meantime, we do have a limited number of pro bono hours, and I'll make sure that I share that link with you after I hop off of this broadcast, Jay. So thank you for asking. All right, and I'm going to check to see if we have any more questions on the other platforms. I don't see any at the moment. Oh, I saw one just pop up. One more. Got a comment that this is great info. I appreciate that because I know it's a lot and there's a lot going on. And we just really want to make sure that we're taking the information that's been released and kind of translating it, making it into something that is useful for people who are dealing with student loans. I appreciate all the likes, loves, and the comments, all that. I'm going to check one more time. All right, I think we're good. If you have any questions that come up, please do reach out to us at mccfw.org/contact. There's a contact form there where you can let us know what your question is. We'll reach out to you with an answer or send you the link to a video if we choose to answer your questions in an upcoming edition of Office Hours. Just want to give just a reminder again about that $15 million figure. I'm so proud of the team at the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. We've been working hard. We've been working really, really hard over the past several months to just spread the word about these temporary changes that affect public service loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment, trying to get as many people in the pipeline as possible. And we're at more than $15 million confirmed. The true tally is much higher, but we only count the dollars for which we've actually seen receipts for, and that's over 15 million right now. So thank you to those of you that have supported us along this journey. And we're just really grateful when people take the knowledge and apply it, because the benefits in this case can be life-changing. So happy to be a part of changing lives. I don't see any more comments at this time. I'm going to check one more time. All right. Okay, I don't see anything else. So thank you again for joining me on this edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. We will be back on April the 24th at noon. So if you have a question, make sure you get it in probably a few days before that, so we have time to vet it and answer it. But until then, I hope you're able to get out and enjoy some of this sunshine like we're experiencing here in Maryland. Take care and be well. Bye-bye.